Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. Facepalmamerica.com is where you can listen to past episodes. You can also do that on virtually any podcasting platform, as I assume you are doing now. You can go to facepalmamerica.com, though, to connect with us on social media. It's a good location if you have someone that has never heard the program before and you want to send them to a place that is easy to remember. It's called Facepalm America. Facepalmamerica.com is a place to go. So there you are. And so I want to say welcome to you as you are listening to this podcast. And I want to say welcome to John Rothmann, who is the host of Around the Political World with John Rothmann. He joins us each week to discuss the news of the day, especially in the political realm. John, welcome back to Facepalm America. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
It's always a pleasure to be with Beowulf Rock.
So as Cary Grant once exclaimed, I believe, Rudy, Rudy, Rudy. Oh, my goodness. $148 million is what Rudy Giuliani has been ordered to pay to Georgia poll workers whom he defamed in the process of covering the tracks of Donald Trump as he tried to overturn the results of the 2020 election. I'd love to examine this in a couple of different ways. One, it's stunning that these legal rulings are finally starting to go against major players on the Trump team or former members of the Trump team. It's an enormous amount, and it also traces the decline of a once prominent Republican, the hero of 9/11, the former mayor of New York City, someone who was once seriously considered a presidential contender, to have fallen to this lowly state. I mean, it's really a sad situation when you think about it in one way, John.
Look, Rudy Giuliani's tragic fall from grace was his own doing. And anyone associated with Donald Trump now knows they're in deep trouble. But the issue here is not Rudy Giuliani. The issue here is Donald Trump. Everything Rudy Giuliani did was at the behest of Donald Trump. And therefore, the person who should really be sweating is Donald Trump. When the Smith case comes to the court at the beginning of January,
Jack Smith, right?
My sense is Donald Trump is toast. He is the one who instigated the whole thing. And by the way, he proudly proclaimed Rudy Giuliani his lawyer. So the real issue here is not Rudy Giuliani and the tragic figure he has become. It is the question of what Donald Trump wanted him to do, what he did, and what he did in the name of Donald Trump. And I expect that this ruling, the ramifications, have less to do with the future of Rudy Giuliani than the future of Donald J. Trump.
Well, I certainly hope that is true. I mean, to have, in this case, such a large civil ruling against Rudy Giuliani, as you have, other, the duplicitous figures on the far right, such as Alex Jones, which doesn't pertain particularly to Trump, but it bespeaks of a particular legal approach that certainly has been successful, and hopefully, if this is applied in a similar way to Donald Trump, you sort of climb the ladder of those who have.
How can it not?
I certainly hope so.
How can it not?
Well, I mean, it's a good question because what they are claiming in certain instances is a certain presidential immunity. Now that's been rejected by one judge, but that may not consistently be the case.
There's no immunity from defamation. If in fact Rudy Giuliani has been held liable,
right? He
says he's going to appeal.
Right.
Let him appeal. But Donald Trump is the one who is responsible, and he will be held responsible. And look, the important thing is that Donald Trump never occupy the Oval Office again. And this is another indication of the reason why he shouldn't. I would be remiss absolutely this morning if I didn't point out that the real issue with Donald Trump now is his statement in New Hampshire just a couple of days ago, talking about poisoning the blood of the country. And I want to be very clear about this. The Democrats compared this with Hitlerian rhetoric. It is absolutely correct. And there is no doubt about it My father was expelled as a professor at the University of Halle-Wittenberg because he was a Jew under the April 7th, 1933 law passed in Germany. It had to do with people who were not Aryan, whose blood was not pure.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, as a member of my family suffered from it, and certainly I understand it fully, and I even recommended to somebody they go back and watch the movie Judgment at Nuremberg, and you'll see the Feldenstein case, which is a central part of the film. Again, it has to do with this whole myth of poisoning the blood of our country. The Republican Party, and I want to be clear about this, the Republican National Committee should meet and expel Donald Trump from their party on the grounds that what he has said is so objectionable. And I would go further and say that all the Republican candidates for president should do the same. They should simply say, this is unacceptable. Can you imagine mass deportations, which is what he's talking about?
Yeah.
It is fascism in its worst form from a former president of the United States of America.
And I know that you have been reluctant, to use the term fascism, but as time goes on, we see that it comes closer and closer to that reality.
It's not closer. It's bullseye.
Yes.
The minute you talk about poisoning the blood of our country, the minute you talk about that crosses the line. And by the way, this is not the first time he said it. The problem is now it's not on a teleprompter. It wasn't a spontaneous mistake in language in the past. It is now on his teleprompter. It is right there. It is very clear. It is very precise. And Donald Trump needs to be held accountable. All people of conscience. Look, he talks about poisoning the blood of America. If you're Italian or Irish or a Jew or Chinese or Japanese, you name the racial stock. We are all immigrants. We are all a nation of immigrants, unless you're Native American. And what Donald Trump did was to insult the entire American people with this concept. And I'm not ever going to let him off the hook for it.
Absolutely. It's really disgusting. You see, and this comes, when he's saying that immigrants form an invasion. This is, he said, this is like a military invasion. Quote, drugs, criminals, gang members, and terrorists are pouring into our country at record levels. It's racist, it's fascist, and it's completely untrue. It
has to be stood up to. Now, Paul Ryan, former Speaker of the House, Republican nominee for vice president in 2012 with Mitt Romney at the head of the ticket, denounced Trump as populist, authoritarian, and narcissistic. Absolutely. Most Americans won't understand those three terms, but we do understand the idea of racism. And let me tell you, there's going to be a primary in South Carolina. There's going to be a primary in New Hampshire. There are going to be caucuses in Iowa. Republicans in those states have to stand up and just say no. And let me tell you, South Carolina has a particular obligation. It is a state with a long history of racism, of racial segregation, of all this kind of rhetorical business. And these people, our people, fellow Americans, have to stand up and just say no. Yes. If I were involved, I would want the Republican National Committee to meet and condemn what Donald Trump said. I think they should. And this is a challenge for the Republican Party. But if Donald Trump wins the nomination for the presidency, I can assure you, Beowulf, I'm going to be talking about this nonstop, not only on my podcast, but in every public speech I make and every time you interview me. This man has, he has no business being anywhere near the Oval Office.
Absolutely.
Liz Cheney is 100% correct.
Absolutely.
And Rudy Giuliani is an example of this because Giuliani has been defending Trump. And I don't believe in guilt by association, but I do believe that when you cross a line, you cross a line. Let me also make a comment about Chris Christie, who is still pursuing the Republican nomination. He's the only Republican who's had the guts to stand up and say this. And it is a shame that Ron DeSantis and Governor Haley are unwilling to stand up and make these kinds of declarative statements. It is more important to preserve the nation. And we have to do that in an ethical fashion.
What do you think happened in the last generation or two, John? Because there used to be elected officials, politicians, who would put their country and their conscience and morality in front of maintaining themselves in public office, in front of obtaining campaign donations, in front of going along with the words of people who were clearly of ill intent. And it seems that more and more, while they still exist, they are fewer and fewer. And in the Republican Party, they are almost non-existent because those with conscience have been cast out. How is it that it has changed so much over the course of what seems a relatively short time in American history?
Donald Trump. Donald Trump. The same corruption of American politics we've seen in other countries in the world, historically and today. Look at Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Yes.
All I can tell you is I don't make these statements lightly.
Maloney in Italy. I mean, it's rising around the world. It really seems as if we are back in the 1930s.
But it's not the world that I'm worried about. It's the United States of America. I live here. This is my home.
Yes.
I expect more from my country. And I think the Republican Party not having the courage to stand up is a disgrace. Mitt Romney, I did not vote for Mitt Romney for president.
Yeah.
But Mitt Romney has had the courage to stand up and look, he's not running for re-election. You know why he's not running for re-election, aside from the fact that he's now 76, 77 years old? The answer is he probably couldn't win in Utah,
right.
Even with the name Romney. They were threatening him with being primaried. Let's be clear about this. Let there be no ambiguity. When I say Donald Trump is a threat to the American system, when I say he's a threat to American democracy, when I say this is something which we have to defeat, Trumpism, I mean it with every fiber of my being. And I can assure you, I have, as you know, over 100,000 people who listen now to my podcast. And I have had the opportunity to speak before countless organizations and crowds. I will speak to the Economic Roundtable here in San Francisco on Wednesday. And I will tell them the same thing. When you have an existential threat to your system of government, and the tragedy is it's being led by a former president of the United States. And that is the ultimate tragedy. Look, if I could create a television commercial, I'd put Paul Ryan, Chris Christie, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Republicans with courage, including all the people who were in Trump's cabinet who have now denounced him. And his former chief of staff, General Kelly. I'd put them all on one stage, and I would have them explain why Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. Now, can a cult be broken by fact? I hope so, because the future of our nation is at stake.
You know what, John? I think that fact is, when it comes to the base, and I mean that in two ways, supporters of Donald Trump, I think losing. I think a record of defeat as opposed to facts resonates more viscerally with them. I don't
know. Look at the abortion question. 7 key states have rejected it. Conservative Republican states.
Right.
And the Republican Party still doesn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I am not against debating issues. I'm not against saying that on occasion I've agreed with Donald Trump. I don't mind saying it at all. But when someone does something so egregious, and then I got to tell you, I read this morning in Politico. I haven't talked about it anywhere yet, so you're the first. They're talking about the resurrection of Richard Nixon and how the Trump people are using Nixon as an example. I worked for Richard Nixon. I knew Richard Nixon very well. Any major book on Nixon, you'll see my name right there. If Richard Nixon were alive, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
Let me just be clear, John. They're saying that Trump is going to resurrect his political career a la Nixon? That's their contention?
No, what they're saying is that Nixon wasn't really so bad after all. Put in his
okay. All right.
And Trump really isn't so bad when you measure everything.
Okay.
Look, I was a Nixonian Republican. I still am somebody who is viewed as a scholar of modern republicanism and who has dealt with the history of the Republican Party. This is a shameful fall for which there is no excuse. So whether you wanted to open with Rudy Giuliani or whether you want to go to the question of Donald Trump and his statements about